in another upgrading version developed on the basis of the MI-35. On this helicopter, as on the MI-35M, the fuselage is being modified and the lights are being adapted to night vision goggles. The radio-electronic complex Brio 24 and the night thermal imaging guidance systems, however, together with the standard day guidance equipment, are intended for providing round-the-clock application of all types of the helicopter's guided and unguided armament. MI-35 type helicopters and their modifications possess a high performance and serve as effective and reliable means of fighting in present-day conditions.
The first 6 Afghan Mi-35 pilots just graduated from a 6-month training program. All are ex-pilots, some of whom flew during the Soviet era, and are ready to get back behind the stick. Today they conducted their first live call for fire exercise. The day starts with a custom weapons load for today's mission. While Czech Republic mentors look on, skilled Afghans take approximately 30 minutes to load 12.7mm rounds and 57mm rockets. The forward air controllers, or no Czechs, who are also Mi-35 pilots themselves, will communicate friendly locations, enemy locations, and give the clearance to fire. Today's students will become tomorrow's instructors.
So we're going to use the old guys that have done it, have flown the aircraft before, to bridge the gap, and then we'll stand up a pipeline schoolhouse at the Kabul Air Corps Training Center, or the Air University, to start training and bringing on new air controllers to push them out to the regional numbered corps in support of the ground forces.
The Czech Republic and American mentors are stabilizing 2 primary missions for the fresh Afghan pilots. The first is a security escort mission, defending Afghan helicopters, transporting VIPs, troops, or supplies as they move across the nation. The second mission is to provide protection for Afghan ground forces through pre-planned fires.
This training is important to us. It is integral to verify enemy targets. We want to get prepared for future missions.
After the 6-month training, they were evaluated and recommended by the advisors to perform the 2 core operations. 4 days later, the Ministry of Defense asked the pilots to fly show-of-force missions. These tried-and-true pilots will continue to grow their experience to pass on to the nation's future. From Kabul, Afghanistan, I'm Air Force Sergeant Michael Hughes.
General Ivan Bovoltsev, head of the Russian military's main administration of combat training of the Russian armed forces, wrote an May 11 article in the Russian military newspaper Krasnaya Zvezda. above all. SEF also said the title may be given to forces including motorized rifle troops, tank units, Marines, airborne, air assault and other units and subunits. This use of shock is apparently designed to recognize subunits, units, and formations that demonstrate a higher degree of training and performance. David Glantz, a retired U.S. Army colonel and expert on the Russian military, told the National Interest. The emphasis here is on improving force readiness. Glantz, perhaps the foremost Western historian of the Soviet military in World War II, explained that the shock army concept predates World War II. Actually, the term shock army dates back to the early 1930s, when, according to field regulations, these were highly trained and reinforced armies designated to spearhead offensive operations. The task assigned to these armies was to create tactical penetrations through which mobile forces, initially cavalry, but later mechanized corps, were to conduct exploitation into the operational depths. Thus shock armies were to be battering rams that would blast a hole in enemy lines, through which armored units would fan out into the enemy's rear areas, severing supply lines and overrunning command posts and artillery batteries. It illustrates how sophisticated Soviet doctrine was for conducting army-level maneuver operations, at least on par with German blitzkrieg theory and far more advanced than American, British and French thinking at the time. Unfortunately, Stalin's purges of most every competent pre-war Soviet general, and the devastation of the German invasion in June 1941, rendered such operations beyond the Red Army's capacity in the early days of the Russo-German War. However, in December 1941 and January 1942, the Soviets created 4 shock armies to lead their winter counter-offensive. The 1st, 3rd and 4th shock armies were deployed near Moscow, where they threw back the German forces threatening the city. The 2nd shock army was deployed at Leningrad, where it was twice encircled and destroyed by the Germans in 1942. Its commander, Andrei Vlasov, was captured by the Germans and defected, becoming the commander of an anti-Soviet army raised by the Nazis. More successful was the 5th Shock Army, which reinforced the devastating Soviet counter-offensive at Stalingrad in December, and fought off attempts by the German 48th Panzer Corps to relieve the encircled 6th Army. Despite pre-war doctrine that called for shock armies to heavily reinforced and well-trained, wartime exigencies made the actual formations much more empty. Most of that weight is armor, and as effective as that's been to keep tanks alive, it comes at a cost in size, weight, speed, and mobility. Over the long term, increasing a tank's size and weight is unsustainable. In the 1970s, the armies of NATO fielded a new generation of anti-tank missiles. The Soviet Union, to protect its investment in a numerically superior tank force, began researching countermeasures. One was the concept of the Active Protection System, or APS. APS involves ringing a tank with sensors, typically millimetric wave radars set up to detect incoming rockets and missiles along the tank's frontal arc. Once an incoming anti-tank round is close enough, the APS launches an interceptor rocket to take out the incoming rocket or missile. Active protection systems are lightweight, effective, and cost less than adding more armor to a tank. The Russian Arena system is developed by the KB Machino-Stroynya Design Bureau located outside Moscow. Arena automatically detects incoming targets at approximately 50 yards and has a 0.07-second reaction time. Anti-tank rockets and missiles, like the Russian RPG-7 and the American TOW, travel at up to 300 yards per second, making them slow enough to be intercepted, but too fast for the system to be operated manually. Arena-equipped tanks are equipped with between 22 and 26 interceptor rockets. Interception takes place approximately 10 feet away from the tank. Other nations are catching on to the APS concept. Israel's trophy system protects Israeli tanks from rockets and missiles in terrorist hands. South Korea is equipping it as a complete package. Armator certainly deserves its billing as the most revolutionary tank in a generation. For the first time, a fully automated, digitized, unmanned turret has been incorporated into a main battle tank. and for the first time a tank crew is embedded within an armored capsule in the hull front. The report emphasizes that it should not be interpreted as an official mod statement. The Armor 2 is the first new MBT developed by Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union. In September, the Russian mod has concluded a contract with Uralvagonzavod, the world's largest tank maker, for the first batch of 100 T-14 armators. Russia plans to around 2,300 T-14s by 2025. The days of an AH-64 Apache gunship taking out a Russian-made tank from a safe distance might be over. The Armor 2 allegedly is one of the first MBTs to be designed from the outset with an active protection system. Among other things, the Armor 2 reportedly boasts a new generation of explosive reactive armor, according to a Russian defense industry source. The new era can resist anti-tank gun shells adopted by NATO countries, including the state-of-the-art shells developed by Rheinmetall and anti-tank ground missiles with high explosive anti-tank warheads. The Armor 2's main weapon is the 125mm smoothbore cannon, capable of firing high-powered munitions, 10 shots a minute at an effective range of up to 7 kilometers, which will be replaced with a more powerful 152mm cannon. With its visions of Jetson-style technology, the Chrysler TV-8 was strange. Almost monstrous, like some mutated mushroom creature out of a 1980s post-apocalyptic nuclear horror flick. Chrysler's design was essentially a giant pod-shaped turret mounted on a lightweight tank chassis, like a big head stuck on top a small body. The crew, weapons and power plant would have been housed in the turret, according to tank historian R.P. Honeycutt's authoritative A History of the Main American Battle Tank Volume 2 inches. The four-man vehicle would have weighed 25 tons, with the turret weighing 15 tons and the turret only 10. It would have been armed with a 90mm T-208 smoothbore cannon and 3 machine guns, including a remote-controlled .50 caliber operated by the tank commander. Closed-circuit television was provided to protect the crew from the flash of nuclear weapons and to increase the field of vision, writes Honeycutt. Various power plants were considered, including a Chrysler V8 engine.